Kind of the same warning as with Hades. Set is not an early game champion. She's not a rush champion. She's not going to win games very fast most of the time. She still has the occasional ability to do, kind of like an explosive turn and win out of nowhere. She had like that is something that actually Hades doesn't have. But they're very similar in that their abilities are almost like non-existent in the early game. Like she might as well just be blank. And in that case, she struggles in a lot of the ways that Hades does struggle. She has 5 base devotion, but unlike Hades, who has ways of getting additional devotion generation a turn by putting stuff in the grave, Set doesn't. She is very, very weak. Like in the early game, she cannot defend herself. She struggles to such a degree, is actually unreal. Like this is why she's like a B tier goddess as far as I'm concerned. Because if you like manage to survive through the early game, that's not actually because of you. Like it's actually not up to you. Set is so incapable of defending herself that if you make it to late game, that's not due to Set or like you playing well. That is almost always due to the fact that your opponent had a bad hand, started slow, played badly, or just in general kind of like could have taken like a different path, or they just simply weren't aggressive enough. Like if Ra just decides that she's going to like slowly build up the board and not jump on you, yeah, Set can win that. But if Set like gets in your face and has like not even a good start but like a reasonable start, with a mummy or two, and she just sticks the mummy in your face and says deal with this, Set can't deal with it. She's most definitely a B tier goddess in that respect. Right, in terms of this kind of like comparison with Hades, of course, like Hades gets more devotion as things go to the grave. Set wants to do a lot of the things that Hades wants to do. She wants to send things to the grave. She'll make a lot of the same moves that Hades does, but she'll make them for completely different reasons. Because she only wants to send stuff to the grave so that she can then get it back out again. That seems super obvious, but in game, it is very noticeable that Hades, like from turn to turn to turn, with like a Taisho on the board, gets stronger, like steadily stronger. Like he just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's not this like sudden thing. He like it is very clear, and you can see it and you can measure it, and you can kind of see like his power level ascend and his win rate. Set isn't like that. She goes a lot slower than Hades, and Hades is already very, very slow. But the one thing she does have is she has the ability to just pop. Like she can go from like 0 to 100 in the way that Hades has to, actually drive for 6 seconds to get to 100. Set can just suddenly like, it's almost like Fast and the Furious. Like most of the time it's like a crappy Ford, but then she uses her nitro booster or something, and she'll just have a turn. We're like, what the, like, where did that come from? And suddenly you realise it's done. Like, she can do that. Like, she can end a match like that. Most of the time, it's really just value trading, like, in the late game, is really hard to deal with Set. Because she'll just outvalue you with the sheer quality of what she can bring to the board compared to what you can bring to the board. That is kind of one of the joys of Set, is she doesn't mind so much about card advantage, less than almost any other goddess. She almost wants to like empty her hand to get to her late game. Like she just uses her hand to get to the late game, and then she goes, oh, I've got no cards. Well, what do I need cards for? I can just pull what I want out of the grave. Like it's not a problem. Like cards, who needs cards? That's stupid. Like I'm gonna beat you, and I'm not even gonna use cards to do it. I'm just gonna beat you. So that is kind of what you have to keep in mind when you're building a deck for Set, in my opinion, is one, she herself has no ability to defend herself. She really, really struggles in the early game. She's super slow. She doesn't need cards. Those are the 2 key things about Set. So when building a deck, why have I only got 40 cards in this deck? Has something happened? Was it did I accidentally click on Great Desert? That's going to annoy me. Let me just fix that quickly. If I can find it. I'm pretty sure it was. Great. Let me just check it now. I must have pressed on something, because of course, my deck has 40 cards in it. This is the deck that I completed Japanese mythology with. I made one change. No, I fixed it. Okay. Yeah, I thought I'd better check that. Where was I at? Yeah, so those are the two key factors about Set. She's super slow. She's really going to struggle. Secondly, she doesn't need a hand. She doesn't care if she has like one card in her hand. She's not out of options. You know, it's very difficult to like cut her out of options in terms of, you know, like the things she has in her hand. The way you like deal with Set is you destroy her options by destroying her devotion. Her devotion level is already low. Like 5 base devotion with no way of boosting that is criminally low. So the way you kind of handle her is like soul extraction. That is the big counter to Set is soul extraction. She will have turns where she's got like 5-10 devotion and she's just trying to get to like Rise of the Pharaoh, Seaquake, or Armageddon. Like if you're out of control, she needs like she cannot get there in one go. She can't even fight you on the board. But she is aiming for Armageddon, which a lot of the time means it's like Set and, you know, like 2 mummies or Set and a Taisho or something. So she's making 8 devotion a turn. It takes her 3-4 turns. That is a massive counter to Set is soul extraction, things like that. Great Desert as well can be like very awkward for her. Not quite to the degree, just because of the way she handles issues on the board. She doesn't care so much about if you have a big threat on board or you've got something on board which is causing you to win, Set can normally deal with it. Right, so I'm just going to like go through the cards. This is normally what I do, right? It's like just generally talk about the goddess and I'll go through the cards one by one. Some of these cards I've talked about like so many times before in like every deck description because I think they're like some of the best cards in the game or they just have utility and they're always useful to you. So I'll probably like speed through those. I'll take a bit more time with like other cards that I don't have in other deck descriptions, which, you know, there's actually something I can add to what I'd normally say about them. Great Desert, yeah. I mean, there are two things that this does for Set that she desperately needs. One, she does kind of have like that win condition of Armageddon Great Desert. If your opponent's just got expensive cards in hand, the game can end right there because they've just got nothing they can put down, which is always useful. Of course, because Set has lower base devotion, this is more expensive than it is for a lot of other goddesses. So it's quite awkward. But Set also really wants to slow down the game. And a lot of the time, like her devotion just isn't going to be that great. It's not about her devotion. It's just about slowing your opponent's devotion down. Can you stop like this rush coming towards you? You know, like your opponent will be building faster than you. Great Desert is just a way of just like trying to take the edge off it. You know, just like blunt it a bit. Stop them from just going straight at you. Because if they go straight at you, like I'm probably just going to say this like so many times, but I'm being honest here. Like this isn't an exaggeration. You've got to do everything you possibly can to accelerate your game and slow down their game. It's a primary concern. You have to do it. Set cannot fight one-on-one. She cannot build a board at the speed that anyone else can build a board. She's possibly the slowest goddess in the game. She simply must like survive. She must hang on. And a lot of the cards are based around that. It's just, can you slow your opponent down? Or can you accelerate and just get there? You know, like, can you just get to this late game that Set has? Because once you get to the late game, you know, she tends to be safe. It's just so difficult to get her there. Osiris is 4. You know, obviously, Set's ability is all about, well, you know, for 20 you pull something out. So you want to pull out like something amazing. Because Set like struggles to get there, most of the deck is just about getting her there. But when she does get her, this is the card. This is the card. Like it just destroys absolutely anything. Well, like this is kind of like one of the strengths of Set. Like I said before, like she doesn't care too much about like health totals. If there's something on the board, Set has ways of destroying it, and it doesn't matter if it has 200 health. It's just irrelevant. Osiris just destroys it. Like it doesn't matter what it is, what type it is. With the exception of Okami, which is, you know, immune to single target elimination, it just does not matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Nidhogg, if it's an Athena. It doesn't matter just how beastly it is. This is why Set is so hard to deal with in the late game. One of the many reasons, because Osiris is a nightmare. It will instantly come down on the board. even if it only destroys something that's worth, you know, like say 10, 15 devotion, well, it only costs you 20 devotion to put on the board from the graveyard. So you've already made back 15 of that 20 investment, and you've now got a 20, 40 body on the board. And you actually want them to kill it a lot of the time. Like, you don't mind putting down your Osiris, destroying their biggest threat, and then if they ever, like, if it can just last a turn, then Osiris makes 7 devotion back for you. And you're well on your way to just using Set's ability again. And it creates like this feedback loop where once she gets there, you know, like Osiris is going to generate the devotion in order for Set to use the ability to get Osiris, who will then generate the devotion. And this is a cycle that is so value positive. It just grinds people down. It, like, Osiris is like, this cycle is literally the opposite of Izumo Taisho. Like, this is a card that I think is kind of rubbish because there's such a large investment behind it. But this costs 30, right? And just destroys the permanent with the least devotion cost. So it starts from the bottom and moves upwards. Osiris destroys the most valuable card. And if your opponent can compete and destroy the Osiris, she then destroys the next valuable and the next valuable. So she starts from the top and moves down. Your opponent just cannot deal with that, almost always. If you can get there, they cannot deal with this. It is just way too much. The body is way too good. The ability is just way too good. You know, absolutely fantastic. Loki's trick. For the same reason that Hades has Loki's trick, a lot of the time you are so close to, you know, like, you're so close to that Armageddon that you so desperately need, but this devotion of 5 is just holding you back. I mean, that's not too difficult to work out, right? Set herself, you know, like, does 5 base devotion. So after 5 turns, she's at 25, which is 1 off Armageddon. You know, like, Loki's trick is just a way of just, like, you really do need this. Just hang in there for just 2 devotion. Set can survive just 1 more turn. And she needs that turn more than almost any other goddess. You know, she cannot fight in the early game. She has to survive. It's all about just survival. Mummy, again, like, it gives you a few positive value trades. It's just chaff, really, but it's chaff that keeps coming back. You can keep bringing out the graveyard. It just puts in work, slows down your opponent, super important. Izumo Taisho, again, for the same reasons as Hades, you must cycle. You must find what you need when you need it. If Set doesn't have that Seaquake when she needs the Seaquake, she loses the game, because you don't clear the board, your opponent clears everything else, Set's sitting there on her own developing 5 devotion. That's just done. Like, that's nothing. You like, that's just not good enough, right? So I've kind of like juggled between like 2, 3, 4 copies of Taisho, because the issue is I used to have Phoenix Egg, right, with Set. But unlike Ra or Isis, who can protect the egg, Set is so poor that she can't actually afford to, like, put bodyguards around the egg. So the egg always got destroyed, like, super quickly, super easily. You know, Set just can't defend it. And, you know, so I was kind of like, with Taisho, I had 4. But again, Set won't actually be able to defend the Taisho. You cannot expect your Taisho to stay on the field forever. She's just not rich enough. She can't afford bodyguards for it. It's gonna die. So I went down to 2, and then I kind of replaced it with Renew. But then I suddenly, like, by the time we got to Japanese mythology, we realised that to some degree we're seeing things a little bit wrong. Set, unlike most goddesses in the game, doesn't like to go first. A lot of the ideal first turns tend to be like Soul Extraction, Mummy, Soul Extraction Egg, you know, Soul Extraction, Minotaur, stuff like that. Just like cheap, easy starting turns, which on Insane mode, get rid of their bonus devotion, take them back to 0, you put down a unit, suddenly, you know, you're at 5+2, so you're at 7, 1 devotion, and then the race starts, you know. That's not going to happen here. You know, that simply doesn't happen. Set actually likes to go second because she gets the 3 and just kind of has to go, okay, look, I'm not going to take your bonus devotion from you because the value of a Taisho is exponential. I'd rather go second, get the devotion from going second so that I have 8 and I can put Taisho down turn 1 when it has the most turns to cycle. you must get this Taisha down turn 1. It's actually one of your win conditions. It's very weird to say that Taisha's a win condition, but for Set it really is a win condition. There are things you must find, and this must be in the graveyard. It's not a question. It must be. You know, like, you have to do it. Which is the same reason that we also have Everflowing Sun, like 2 copies of Everflowing Sun. The Renew as well is just because of the issues with Taisha where you can't really defend it. Just occasionally you're going to have like an Osiris in hand, but you've got no Taisha. So you've got no way of actually getting it to your graveyard to start a loop going. Renew is just like an easy, free devotion way of just, you know, drawing a card, throwing the Osiris. Now we can begin. Yeah. Sometimes, you know, if your opponent's too dominant, they're just going to destroy your Taisha as soon as it goes down. And you've accomplished nothing. You've probably made like a devotion loss. And as far as Set's concerned, ever making a devotion loss in the early to mid game is a death sentence. You know, like I've already said, she is a B tier goddess. She struggles. She really does. It's not about her. It's about your opponent a lot of the time. You must work so hard. You cannot afford to make like negative EV moves. You must keep just trying to make like little positive moves to stay in the game for as long as you possibly can. Soul Extraction. As you can expect, like she does actually need this. If at any point she has an opportunity to pull off, you know, an 8-10 extraction, where, you know, if your opponent's saving for something, if you ever manage to catch them short and they've got a turn where they have to pass, your eyes light up. As Set, your eyes literally light up. Like, oh, like you're letting me in the game right now. This is it. Like, this is how I worm my way. Like, with the very thin, like, knife's edge I'm on. This is how I navigate this maze to somehow win this game. If they ever pass extraction, it's so valuable to you. It's not a game-winning first move in the way that, well, not game-winning, but it's a very strong first move for other goddesses to, you know, soul extract turn 1 into, you know, Egg or Minotaur. But because Set only gets 5 devotion generation a turn, soul extraction costs 2, which is, you know, that's 40% of her devotion. She's got 3 left. And so, like, it cripples her more. It's actually extremely significant. I never really realised too much until now. But if you've got 6 base devotion and you use soul extraction, you've only lost, you know, a third of your devotion. You've still got 4 devotion. You can mummy, you know, like you can do something. With 4 devotion, it's not so bad. And next turn, you've got 10. But Set only has 3, and next turn she has 8. And it's an uphill battle. It's very, very significant, and it really is crippling. Soul Extraction is just your way of like hanging in there. It's not the strong move that it is for other goddesses. It's a card that you have to have, and if you see the opportunity, you snipe them straight away. Because the EV move you've just made is probably the difference between them throwing down that Greek temple and then getting another 5 devotion a turn, which you really cannot deal with in the early game. And just get, you know, just not being able to play something, like, super important. Time Reflow, talked about it a million times in a million deck descriptions. You know, it uses your grave as a toolbox. It's effectively just other copies of other miracles you have. If, you know, you only got like 1 copy of Armageddon, used it, and every other copy of Armageddon is at the bottom of your deck and you're never going to get to it, then at least Time Reflow effectively turns that 1 copy of Armageddon you had into, you know, like 3 more copies of Armageddon if necessary. If that's what you're getting, like Time Reflows, and you can't get the Armageddons. But, you know, of course, it's flexible. Like Time Reflow can be the Seaquake, it can be the Armageddon, even the Renew. If that's what you really need, it can be the Renew or that Rise of the Pharaoh. Talking of Rise of the Pharaoh, yeah, again, like, I'm going to keep saying, like, kind of like similar to Hades, but it is the same. Like we were saying with Hades, like, because Hades is slow, the deck has to be fast. You cannot have like a clunky slow deck. It needs to be like a jet engine. That's even more true. Honestly, that's even more true in this case. You'll see that I haven't only got Rise of the Pharaoh, but Set struggles so much. I've actually got Path of the Ancient as well, which normally I wouldn't even consider using. But this card actually finds use a surprising amount of time. She falls short so often that this is just about gets her, and she has to get there. It's even worse than Hades, it really is. So because it's even worse, the deck is even faster. What this generally means is you know, when you're going for the Seaquake, you can Rise of the Pharaoh and just get a mummy out of it as well. Or, you know, like double Rise of the Pharaoh, Seaquake, now you've got your Taisho, the board is clear, you can start again, you can start digging. Also, this is kind of weird, right? But because it's a divisible of 2, the Rise of the Pharaoh gets you to the 20 that set needs an awful lot of the time. It is very kind of strange. Also, Osiris herself is a divisible of 4 in terms of movement. And, you know, like, I mean, what else can you say? Like, 3 times 4 is also 2 times 6. So like, 4 factors into Set in a weird way. I think it's just this deck. But then again, I can't see, like, too many other ways of building Set because there are things she needs. Rise of the Pharaoh is that ability to pop. Like I was talking before, like Hades is like slowly ascends. Set is going to struggle and be like way below, and then she'll just go from 0 to 100. That is in large part due to stuff like this, where you've got 2 Rise of the Pharaohs in hand, a Path of the Ancient in hand. This will happen to you a surprising amount because you're not going to use them until you have a use for them. Like if you're at 16 and you need to get to 20 for Set to use her ability, of course you use the Rise of the Pharaoh, but in the early to mid game, there's nothing to use it on. You can't even use it because it needs to be at 16. But as soon as you hit that mid game, and this is like you've accumulated, you know, Rise of the Pharaoh, Path of the Ancient, and you've got something to use these on, you use 2 Rise of the Pharaohs, a Path of the Ancient, a Seaquake, an Armageddon, it doesn't matter. But she is very capable of just having this turn that just pops. And suddenly you're looking at a turn where she's like Osiris is, but she's got 12 left over, attacks twice with the Osiris, and then moves. And on that single turn, Set goes from, oh my god, I'm getting trashed in this match, to, oh my god, you are never going to win this match. If you, like this Osiris that I have just thrown onto the battlefield, you deal with it in this turn, or next turn, I get 7 devotion generation from this Osiris, and, you know, plus everything else on the board, like the 5 here. So that's 12, right? You're more than halfway to getting Osiris again. So if you do not deal with Osiris in this turn, the cycle started. This is it. This is the spin cycle. This is Set's late game. Osiris must be in the grave. You want to start the spin cycle as soon as possible, because as soon as it starts, and you, as your opponent can't keep up and just destroy this, it's all over. Like just value town. So yeah, a surprising amount of time, you're just going to like collect Rise of the Pharaohs in your hand. There's not a lot to do with them, and then suddenly there's a lot to do with them. And the turn you have is so big, and Set needs that turn. She's kind of like, you know, like she waxes and wanes almost, but it's closer to say that, like she just jumps. It is kind of like really crazy, and occasionally, like if your opponent's not careful, there is no defense about it. So there's an Osiris, and there's no way of really dealing with it. And even if you deal with it, Set does it like almost wants you to deal with it, because there are very few ways of like devotion, positive ways of dealing with an Osiris. Right, Seaquake, Earthquake, Armageddon. These are the good old boys. They're in almost like they're in every deck basically that I'm in, and the question is just the numbers, yeah. So yeah, you can see like Armageddon times 4. I was looking at this and I was like, is it really that bad? Yes, it is really that bad. Yes, more than any other goddess in the game that I've played so far. You must have the cards you need when you need them. If you do not have the Armageddon, it's just done. Like sometimes, like Seaquaking when they still got 2 monuments on the board, that's not enough because Set is too slow. She will always be too slow. She cannot compete. She can only compete with, you know, like the ability to clear the board and start from the start, with the capability of going into, you know, like her late game. So Armageddon is a must for her in a way that, you know, like other goddesses can fight, you know, like they can build a board too. No, like so many games just came down to, okay, look, I'm going to slow you down as much as I possibly can. And if I get to Armageddon, I'm going to clear the board. And now the game really starts, you know. But if you beat me in the early game, then you know, there's just nothing. If I can't get to Armageddon, I just lose. If I don't have Armageddon in my hand, I just lose. Yeah, I've already talked about the Renew, Path of the Ancient, Ever-Flowing Sun. Path of the Ancient, like, this is really how bad it is, that even at, like, you know, like 8, 9, 10, 11 devotion, Set needs a card to boost her, like, just that little bit higher. Right, so I've talked about the goddess in general. I've talked about the, like, I've gone through the cards in the deck. I normally just like summarize the whole thing. It's not too difficult to summarize. Set is a B tier goddess. I decided to deal with her right now just because I've already done like Isis and Ra, and I wanted to do like all the Egyptian goddesses. I said right from the start of campaign, like in Greek mythology before we even started, I'm really apprehensive about this. I don't feel too easy about this. The way that I'm seeing Set right now, she just looks like 5 generation and a blank card. Like, if you get to the late game, another goddess would have just won the game, you know, with the tools that they have compared to Set. 100% still B tier. If you want to play her though, you want to just make the deck as fast as you possibly can. Give her every opportunity she possibly can to, you know, get to that late game. Do whatever you need to do. Like 4 Rise of the Pharaohs, maybe 2 Path of the Ancients isn't enough for her. She doesn't mind, like, I should actually talk about this as well, kind of. As I've said before, Set doesn't care about hand advantage, and Path of the Ancient and Rise of the Pharaoh are 2 cards that don't actually do anything in themselves. Like, they're empty card slots in a way. Like, as soon as they hit your hand, you use them and you just get an extra 4 devotion. They don't actually affect the board. They don't affect anything. It's just gain 4 devotion, lose a card. So they're automatically like card disadvantage. You're trading devotion for card advantage. You know, like, these aren't cards. They don't exist in a way. But of course, Set doesn't mind so much about card advantage or having cards in her hand. She pulls what she needs out of the grave if she really, really needs it. The deck is so streamlined that basically we've just got the Swiss Army knife, which is Osiris. This is what Set almost always really, really needs. There isn't too many other units that you can pull out that would do anything better than Osiris would do. Yeah, that's it though, basically. Best of luck with it. It was definitely a grind. I was enjoying it. Norse mythology really screws you up though, and Soul Extraction is so bad into Set that I can't really recommend her. If you like, in terms of like being competitive, you know, like, I can't really recommend Set in that respect. I don't think she's that good. I hope I'm wrong and someone will find like a deck list or a way of playing her that's amazing. But I definitely couldn't find any way of playing Set other than I'm going to hang on and survive and slow you down and just throw this chaff in your way, get in the way, buy myself just that little bit of like that extra turn I need so I can get to Armageddon or Seaquake, just something so I can gain parity in the game. And I mean, good luck, yeah, good luck.